Hey. Welcome back to our second live stream of the day. We are still figuring these things out. So, things that I can improve from last one, I've already noticed. So, we're going to take a look at working in command line interface on this one. We're going to be taking a look at our command line commands that we need to know in the Windows world, as well as commands that you need to know in the terminal world, both in macOS and in Linux. Now, I will say this real fast. You don't need to know how to actually use any of these commands, but you need to know what they're used for. What I mean by that is you're not going to be asked on the exam how to actually make a directory. You're not going to have to type in, MD, blah, 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 to make a directory. But if asked, you should know what command makes a directory, or what command is what you use for administrative access in, for example, Linux. So you need to be familiar with what the commands do, but not actually how to execute the commands. Now, as a good tech, you should know how to actually do these things. All right, so here we go again. I went looking, by the way, for the donation button. I'm gonna have to do some research on that one to try to find out where that actually lives. So let's get on here with what we're doing. So taking a look at working in command line interface. Our objectives for this lesson are to describe the purpose and features of the command line interface, access the command line interface, explain the hierarchical directory tree, execute basic file and folder manipulations, perform fundamental command line and terminal functions, and create and run basic batch files. We're kind of be ignoring that one a little bit in person. So taking a quick look first at the user interface. The operating system interface, user interface, is how we interact with the operating system programs. We're familiar with this. This is how you actually operate with the operating system. And there are two basic kind of families when it comes to interacting with the computer. You have, of course, the graphic user interface. That's the warm, fuzzy, it's so nice to be here. Click on this, click on that. Isn't it a lovely day? While the other one is, you better know what you're doing, for this is the text-based one. Blah. By the way, I just killed my voice. The text-based one is what us old techs used to use. Back before there was Windows, there was DOS, and it was all command line. And if you wanted to play even a video game, you better know how to make the command line work to get to do what you wanted to do. So I'll be reminiscing quite a bit, I'm sure, during this presentation. So command line interface, before there was a graphic user interface, before there was GUI, there was, of course, command line interface. Now, CLI, command line interface, is really old. The concept of it is very old. And when we get newer techs, they don't quite understand, well, why do I have to use that? Because there is tremendous power in the command line. Even with all the tools and things that we've shown you so far in the Windows world and in the previous lesson, the macOS and Linux world, for true unlimited power, you have to use your command line interface. And I just realized I probably should have added that unlimited power audio clip to my Steam Deck. Oh well, live and learn. So, and network admin, security experts, computer technicians, you really should be familiar with command line interface. So we have something called shells. When you launch your command line interface, it opens in a shell. The user enter commands into that shell. The shell then sends the commands to the operating system for interpretation and execution. This is something you need to know. Windows uses PowerShell and command prompt. We will be playing with command prompt because that's where the exam focuses on. Linux typically uses something called a bash shell. Now, for those of you who are ITF Plus certified, you might remember that because they do ask you on that exam, or they could ask you, what is running the terminal shell? What command line? What is the thing that runs terminal in Linux? And that would, of course, be bash. And macOS uses that thing that I'm not even going to try to pronounce because I am sure I will pronounce it wrong. So here we have three different examples of our shells. We have our command prompt, we have macOS terminal, and we also have Mint terminal, which is a version of or a distro of Linux. Now, I will say this. If you know how to execute commands in macOS terminal and Linux terminal, they're pretty much the same thing from everything I've seen. Many years ago, I took a class in Linux, and it was taught at Lone Star Community College, and it was recommended that we use an Apple product, a macOS or an Apple laptop or something like that, because terminal, remember macOS was built off Unix, and so terminal had those same commands. So there you go. So introducing Windows command line. So every version of Windows has the command line built in. This is not DOS. DOS is dead. DOS has been dead for a very long time. And as the command line has evolved, it's gotten more and more powerful. Now I'm going to share with you a book. This is a relatively old book, but this book, as you can see, this book is just on Windows command line. This is not a thin book, okay? This is not a thin book. This is just on Windows command line, okay? So command line is very, very powerful. It is still very much used. And as technicians, as security experts, as network admin, you need to know the basics of how this stuff works. So every version of Windows, like I said, has command line's got increased functionality and versatility. So how do you open up the command prompt? Well, you can do it directly. Use the run command in Windows. So open the run command in Windows. You can hold the Windows logo and type R. And once you're in there, just type in CMD and it will launch it. You can also use the start menu. You open the start menu and you scroll down to command prompt and you can get there the same way. Now, there are some commands that you need to be an admin for. So when we talk about the terminal commands, you're going to hear something called sudo. Well, in Windows command prompt, you also need to know how to get there as an admin. So even if you're logged in as an admin of that computer, by default, the command line's still going to run in normal mode. So you need to be able to launch it as an admin. So how do you do this? Well, you open up the start menu, you scroll down and click on Windows System, then you right click on the command prompt, you click more, and then you click run as an administrator. Now, let me see here if I can do this. I don't know if I can, no. All right. Normally in a face-to-face class, this is when I would pop out of the PowerPoint and actually show you on the computer how to do this. Because I'm using OBS and I haven't tried this before, I don't want to break anything. So we're just going to stick with the PowerPoint as far as how to get there. So again, open up start menu, get to the command prompt. Instead of just clicking on command prompt, you right click on it, click more, and then click run as an admin. And then it will show you running as an admin. All right, so command line interface. How does a command line interface work? Well, you begin with a prompt indicator the computer is ready to do something, such as C:/. You type in a command, you press enter. The command is executed, a new prompt is displayed and ready for the next command. So here, for example, is a command prompt. This is actually on the computer, so you can see this. Oh, thank you, Ria. I'm going to have to take a look at that. So in this thing, you can see right here is a blinking cursor. This is what we see when we're in command prompt. It says we're ready for a command. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, okay? You type in the command, and sometimes it'll tell you when you made a mistake. So for example, you can see I made a mistake here in the code or in the typing. It will actually tell you, hey, this is a mistake. Sometimes it doesn't tell you that a mistake is made. Sometimes it doesn't give you any hint. Sometimes it just is what it is. All right, let's go back to our regular window. So the command prompt, it's always focused on a specific folder. It's always targeted somewhere. Any commands operate on the files and folders within the folder that you're focused on. So you must first focus on the drive or folder where you want to work. You can also customize the command line interface. You can change the properties, you can change fonts, color, the background, all sorts of things. What's wild is that I've taught this for many years, And once I show students how to change the properties of it, to change the font colors and the backgrounds, usually I wind up some very interesting command line interface windows, color schemes that no person should ever have to see. And they do that, or they make it where you can't see the text because it's the same color as the background. Anyways, the point is that you can change how your interactions are as far as the kind of the theme, right? The feel, the look, and all this other stuff. Apple does the same thing. macOS, you can change the terminal settings, the properties. They actually do themes with those. With Windows 11, I noticed that they kind of borrowed a little from macOS, where it's a little bit more Apple-ish as far as the feel goes. When you're done in your command prompt, you just type in exit. You can either close the window. So for example, up here, I can either click here, or I can type in exit down here, and it will exit me out of that command prompt. So the prompt and file structure. So drives and folders. Operating systems assign partitions and drive letters or names, right? So in the early days of computing, there were no C drives, there were no hard drives, there was no storage. All you had were floppy drives. And so if you wanted to boot up the computer, you would put in a floppy drive. Maybe you're rich and you could afford 2 floppy drives on the computer. So drive A and drive B were reserved for floppy drives, and they have historically been reserved for floppy drives. And even today, where floppy drives are like, good luck finding any of them, they still remain. And so our hard drives, our main storage device, has defaulted to the C drive. And that is the way it has been, and that is the way it shall be until whenever. So operating systems use a hierarchical directory tree. Files are put into groups called folders. So here we can see kind of just a organizational structure of this. Folders and files must be unique. They can't have the same name in the same folder. Now, let me pause there. If you wanted to make a folder called Global Domination Plans, okay, and that was your folder name, you could have as many folders called that as you want. They just couldn't be in the same location. So you could have that folder name under your C drive, under ideas, and then in there, or you might have it in C drive and then another folder called failed plans and then put it there. But the thing is that you cannot have the same name, file, or folder in the exact same location. When they're in different locations, they actually have different names. Now, they don't look like different names to us. As those humans, they look like the same thing. But on the back end, the pathway to get there is different. So the computer has a different name for them based off the entire path it gets to go there. So again, for us humans, it looks the same, but to the computer, there is quite a difference in the name. And I just kind of alluded to this, the location of a file is called its path, right? It's how you get there. So in this one, right, we see that we have a file. The name is document.txt. That's a text file. The path is C:\folder1 \folder2 \folder3. You can have more than one file named document.txt, but they cannot be along the same path. So you could have a folder called or text document called document.txt in the folder 1 thing. You could have another one in folder 2, and you can have another one in folder 3, but you can't have them in the same exact folder. If you try to put them in the same folder, you either get an error message or it's going to automatically change the name. In the old days, it would give you an error message, bad things would happen. Nowadays, it's more idiot proof. All right, so we've said folders multiple times, but here's the thing. GUI, graphic user interface folders, are called folders. So in Windows, in a nice comfy world of Windows, we call them folders. In the more, good luck on your own command line interface, we call them directories. So some of us old tech kind of switch back and forth between folders and directories, interchangeable. Technically, in the command line, they're called directories and not folders. In the graphic user interface, they're called folders, not directories. But hey, as long as you know what we're talking about, that's all that matters. Okay, give us a break. It's past our nap time. All right, moving on. to our command line interface. So we begin with a prompt indicating the computer is ready to do something. Like I said, you type in your command, you press enter, the command is executed, and then a new prompt is displayed telling you we're ready for the next command. So tech tip for you. The command prompt is always focused on a specific folder. Any commands operate on the files and folders in that folder or directory, see I'm already doing it, in which you're focused. You must first focus on the drive and folder or directory where you want to actually get the work done. Now, there are some forbidden characters. Ooh, forbidden characters. These are the forbidden characters. You cannot use these characters, okay, in naming your files and folders. Okay, these just don't work. When you try to do them, you'll probably get an error message of, improper name or forbidden name or something like that. So entering command line, commands in the command line. So first of all, syntax matters. And here are some funny little things right here. So we're going to learn to cut and paste, kids. Let's eat grandma. You can get on the airplane. When it should be, right, we're going to learn to cut and paste, comma, kids. So we're going to learn to cut and paste, kids. Let's eat, grandma. And you can get in the plane. So grammar is very important. And a lot of things, like, for example, as you're typing on your phone, you're going to get autocorrect, you're going to get auto suggestions, you're going to get autocomplete ideas. In the world of command line, no, we don't play that game. Okay, command line, you either know how to type it or you don't. If you don't know how to type it, you're not going to get the results you want. So syntax matters a great deal in all command lines, whether it's terminal or Windows or whatever, syntax matters a lot. So what is syntax? The way in which linguistic elements such as words are put together to form constituents such as phrases or clauses. Basically, syntax is the rules of how we write. It's how we put the words together. We like to make gooder sentences. And so we do this correctly, and it's very important when we deal with our command lines. It's also a good idea if you're still taking English classes in high school or college. So syntax and switches. The command line requires the exact syntax for each command. Many commands have switches. Switches are going to add functionality to the command. What do I mean by this? If you are typing in a certain command in a command line, you have these additional switches that can make things different, right? So you can add different functionalities. You can do different things with it. So the command is kind of the family of what it can do, while the switches help you focus in on different aspects of that command or different functionalities of that command. You can widen things out. You can bring things into a better focus. You can make them more powerful. You can take power away. But the switches are really just add different elements to a normal command. One of the things that you definitely need to know about is the help command. This has been on every exam. It's you can have it on every test, but you need to know what the help command does. So help, if you just type help in, it gives a one-line description of each command. So let me pop up our thing here. Let me clear my screen real fast. And let me type in help. Okay. This is actually real in real time. So you're seeing all the different helps that can happen. Let me do it again for you. Now, I will say this right now. Let me kind of get this disclaimer out of the way. It's one thing to do this lesson in person in front of people where you can have interactions. It's another thing when you're trying to do a live stream and I'm paying attention not only to what I'm trying to teach, I'm also paying attention to the technology to make sure it's working. So we'll see how this turns out, okay? So let's go back to our command line. So I'm going to just type in help, right? Just type in help and see what happens. So I typed in the term or the word help. The command is help. I now hit enter to execute the command. Boom, all those things just happened. Let's take a look at a few switches. Okay, so that does this. Now, if I type in help command, I can get help with a specific command. So let me type in help space dir. Well, I just asked for help for a specific command called directory. dir is for directory. It's going to list all the things in that folder, or that directory, I should say. So we can see that these are the available switches that I can add to that particular command to get things done. Let me press the any key to see even more. Now, if you look over here, I can type in the command followed by a question mark to get even more help. So let me clear screen first, CLS. Let me type in help space / question mark. And there is the actual help for that command. Okay. What does help? What does it do? Okay. Well, actually, I did it wrong. Let me type in directory with that. I'm asking help for help. That doesn't work too good. Although it's kind of funny. Let's actually take a look at that real fast. I wasn't planning on that one. Help / question mark. What does help do? Provides helpful information for Windows command. Well, one would think that if you help, how do I get help for help? All right, moving on. Oh, the fun of doing a live stream. All right, so let's take a look at navigating in the command line. And things are going to get even more interesting as I try to do this in real time in front of everybody on a live stream. So these are navigational commands. Now, I will tell you this. In the 802.11, I'm messing, no. The 1102, I'm going into wireless here. In the 1102 objectives, they specifically list commands you need to know. So the commands I am sharing with you, you need to know what all of these do. And don't worry, they actually make sense. Remember, these commands were designed for people to actually use their computers with. These weren't designed to trick up people or to test people or make it hard. These commands were what we used to use in order to get things done on the computer. So it might seem like a lot, but they do make a little sense. Yes, no, I said the any key. Okay, so here are the commands we need to know. We have CD. CD stands for change directory. It allows you to change the directory that you're in. So you can just change whatever directory you are currently in to another directory. If you use the / for CD, it brings you back to the root directory. The root is kind of the trunk of the tree. It's the base of the thing. It's where everything originates from, okay? If you type in CD ... it brings you back up one level from where you were a minute ago. The dir command, you've already seen me use that several times, stands for directory. This is what we used to use back in the old days to try to figure out what was in a folder. So let's say that I wanted to play Doom, the original Doom, which was a DOS-based game. I might not remember what directory it was in. So I would type in dir, and it would show me what was in that directory, and I might see games. So I would type in CD space games, go into that directory. Okay, what was the folder called, or what was the directory called? dir. Okay, that's what Doom is. And so that way you could kind of navigate through your file structure. So dir was a huge one that we used to use back in the day, and you still use it today. MD makes a directory. If you want to make a folder, i.e. a directory, this makes a directory. If you want to remove a directory, then you use the rmdir command. This deletes the directory and any subdirectories underneath it. Well, let me spawn back here. That's funny. Oops. Snap. Okay, well, I try to do there we go. Trying to respond to a comment and kind of got off track there. Then we could navigate between different folders, or not folders, but drives. So if I wanted to go from the C drive to a D drive, or if I had a different drive I need to move through, I could type in C : or C : or D : and that would bring me to those different drives. Okay, now. When I was preparing for this, I initially hid these slides. Then I'm like, let me give this a try. So I'm going to try to do this with you all live on the live stream. If this was in person, you'd be doing them in class, but we're going to see how this works because I think there's a lot of educational value in trying these. You need to see how these commands actually work. You can try them on your own. If you're in my class, whether you're in my in-person class or you're part of my online course, you get access to these as well. So let's see how this works. So let's see how we do this. All right. I am going to open this up to the side. And I want to, did I just crash? Well, I just crashed PowerPoint. So that's fun. So let me try to get that open again here while we're waiting here. So this is fun. Let me close that out. Hold on, folks. Sorry about this. Okay, of all the things I was not expecting to crash PowerPoint. So maybe I will not be doing the commands for you all. That might, yeah. Sorry about that. Of all the things that I did not expect to happen, having PowerPoint crash was definitely one of them. Okay. Show. Yay. Live feed, live streams. All right. So if this is, let me see if I can do this without crashing everything. I don't want to, I'm going to try this again. And I'm hoping I don't kill it. Okay. So I've already opened up the command line. I'm going to type in CD /, which brings me to my root directory. Okay. So a minute ago, I was in my own personal directory. I was in the Ford directory because that's the directory I'm in. That's my default based off my user account information. So I typed in CD /, it brought me back to my root directory. Now I want to see what's in this root directory. I'm going to type in dir and crossing my fingers I don't crash PowerPoint again. And now I can see that in my root directory, this is my root directory of the C drive, that I have the following directories, or if I was in my graphic user interface, folders. So these are all in there. Okay. So once again, let me show you how I did this. Let me clear my screen. Okay. I typed in CD /, which you won't notice the difference because I'm already in my root directory. That brought me back to my root. And then I typed in dir, and that listed everything in that root directory. Okay. Now let's move on. Now I'm like clicking buttons very carefully here. Like clicking a button slowly and carefully is going to make a difference between PowerPoint crashing on me. All right. So let's do this one. Oh, good Lord, help me. All right, we're gonna try this one together. Let's now try to make these directories. So I am already in my C drive. I'm in my root directory. Let me clear my screen real fast. I need to make a directory. So I'm going to type in MD for make directory 01. Okay. Now notice that there's no confirmation I did what I did, right? There's nothing that's warm and fuzzy saying, hey, good job. You just did it, right? We might have done it. We might not have done it. How do I find out? Well, I'm going to type in dir, and if I look, I see a folder or a directory named 01. So I've made a directory. I am now going to change directories to 01 and look at what happened to my prompt. I am now in directory 01. So I have made a directory. I now see my directory, and I did CD to change directory to directory 01. I am now going to make another directory. So I'm going to type in MD for make directory 02. Again, no confirmation I did this right. I want to double check. Let me type in dir, and I can see that there is in fact a 02 directory. I want to change directories again. So we use the CD command, right, for change directory 02. I am now in directory 02. Cool. I want to make a third directory called MD03. Type or hit enter and dir to make sure I did it correctly. There's 03. So I could go in there if I wanted to. So now I want to navigate out of here. So what do I want to do? I want to type in cd ... This is going to pull us back one directory. So let's see here. Actually, I forgot to go into 03. So I'm going to go change directory 03. So I am now in directory 03. I want to go back up to directory 2. So I'm going to type in cd space ... And notice I am now back into my 02 directory. I'm back one. I want to get rid of, I believe I want to get rid of my directory 3. So I'm going to type in rmdir for remove directory 03. And did it work? I don't know. How do we find out? We type in dir, boom, and notice that directory 03 is gone. So that is how we navigate around our folders. And believe it or not, that's what we used to have to do every time we got on the computer before Windows or macOS came out. We had to use these commands to do all of this. If you wanted to get to a directory, this is what you had to do. If you wanted to make a new directory, you had to do that. You wanted to delete something, you wanted to delete a directory, you had to do that. So it was a lot of fun back then. So, yay, GUI. All right, let's take a look at utility commands. These are commands that you need to know. Okay, Rio, we are in Windows. We're not in Linux. So we will talk about the Linux commands, but you're not wrong. It's just we're in the Windows world right now. Okay, so here are the utility commands that you need to know. We have check disk. Check disk is going to check the hard drives for error. It can also try to fix the hard drive problems and display a status report. Disk part shows and can configure disk partitions properly. Okay. Format will format the hard drive. GP result will show the group policies of the group policy, that shows group policy information up for a machine or a user. That one is, all these are on the exam or could be on the exam. GP update is going to update group policies, and net use is going to connect or disconnect a computer from a shared resource, can also display information about what the connections are. We have net users, which can add or modify user accounts. SFC, which will be, we can actually use that to repair corrupt or missing system files. It's a very powerful tool that you should be familiar with as a Windows user. You have shutdown, which will shut down the computer, and WinVer, which shows you the current version of Windows running on your computer. Okay, let's see if we can do this. All right, so let's run check disk. So I've got my command line prompt open again, and we are going to try to do check disk. So I'm going to type in CHKDSK, can we buy some vowels? And I'm going to run it. Now, notice that it says access denied. Okay, you do not have sufficient privileges or the disk might be locked. So what we ran into here is that I am not running this as an admin. I am running this as a normal user. Okay, I need to run it as an admin to get that ability. So kind of behind the scenes, you're not seeing me do this because it's on my other screen. I am going into my start menu. And I'm going to run. I didn't lose my, I didn't lose my signal, did I? My UAC popped up. All right, I am now in administrative. Okay, I am now as an admin. What I did is I went into my start menu. It looks like Windows is calling this terminal now in Windows 11. Okay, and now I am in the admin version of this. Okay, can I drag this over now? We can minimize that. Now let's see what happens here. So let me run. Here's how you do this in Windows 10. Okay, you go to Windows System, you right click on the command prompt, you go to more, and you click run as admin. You can, however, change this so you don't have to keep going back and doing everything like that. Instead of just running run, you can right click on the command prompt icon, make sure you're on the shortcut tab, click advanced, and click run as admin. All right, so let's do check disk again. Where you go, where you go, where you go, where you go. There you are. One of the things I'm not a fan of when it comes to Windows 11, in fact, there's a few things I'm not a fan of when it comes to Windows 11, is trying to get something to go open window to open correctly. It just seems to be fun. So I'm going to type in check disk again. And right there, we can see that it's doing something. Okay. So it's examining right now as I am doing this lesson, it's examining my storage drive. Okay. There are other options that you can add. These are, remember, the switches that you can do. So this was kind of a very low level check disk. It really wasn't looking for too much, which is also why it was very fast. But if I wanted to run check disk/F, it'll also try to fix any errors it finds. If I use the switch R, it'll try to fix sector issues. And if I do X, it's going to dismount volumes like in eject or for flash drives. I'm not going to run this now because I am trying to live stream at the same time that I'm doing this, and I don't want to bog my computer down. But SFC is going to check for Windows file system errors. It's going to try to find problems with your Windows system files. Windows system files are critical for how Windows runs. If they get corrupted or if they get missing, you can have all sorts of problems. So you definitely want to be familiar with this command to check for system file issues. You also can, like I said earlier, type winver. This will show you the version of Windows that you're running. I'm obviously not going to put this command in because I don't want the computer to shut down. But if you type in shutdown, it will shut down the computer. You can do all sorts of switches on there. You can put a timer on there. You can also abort it. Many years ago, when the blaster virus came out, the blaster worm came out, it would automatically shut computers down. And so as a technician, we had to jump into command line and disable shutdown. And you did that by shutting down the shutdown. So that's how you had to block the shutting down of the shutdown. Good times. And you had to do it fast because it was like a 20 or 30-second countdown. All right, then we have file commands. These are the commands you need to know. So these are the different file commands. You have ren and rename. As you can imagine, these are used to rename files. We have del and erase. These are used to delete files. And you have move, which moves your files around. You have copy. This makes a copy of the file in a new location. You have xcopy, which copies files and directories, multiple at a time. And then you have robocopy. Robocopy is a more robust file copy. It allows for a quicker and more efficient method than previous copy commands. Then we have wildcards. Wildcards are used as special characters. So if you forget something, if you forget the name of a file, or you forget an extension, you can use these wildcards to kind of search for everything related. This is also why these specific characters are not allowed in names. These are forbidden characters because they're reserved for wildcards. In the example I have in front of you, if, for example, bingo.txt, right, we're missing the I. We don't remember what the I was. We don't remember what that letter was. So by putting a question mark, we're looking for one character. If we did an asterisk, it's looking for everything after B that is a text file. So it's obviously going to have more results. All right, we are not going to do this. If you're in my class, if you're in my face-to-face class, we will do this in class where we go in, we actually make files or folders, and you'll see what we're going to do with them in just a second. So we would go into our Windows and make these folders. It's just faster to do it that way. I would create or have the students create text documents to go into these folders. So then we could actually work with them. So we'd actually go into CD, which changes your directory. You type in dir, which would allow you to see everything there. You would change your directory again. You would see all the files in there. We would copy things. So this is definitely much more of an in-person type of lab versus one that we're going to do in a live stream. Also, given the fact that I've already crashed the PowerPoint once, I really don't want to try it again. So sorry about that. Let me get to where we're going to continue here. All right, moving on. All right. Looking at terminal. So we looked at the commands that you need to be familiar with in Windows command line. Again, you're not going to have to execute them for the test, but you should be familiar if they say, how would you change directories? How would you see what's in a directory? How would you find out more information about a command? How would you find a file where you're unsure of one character versus a whole bunch of characters? They're not going to actually ask you to execute these, but you do need to know what they do instead of, well, let me try speaking in English here. You don't need to actually do the command, but you need to know what the commands are for. Okay, so if you're a fan of Harry Potter, for example, okay, you can't cast the spells. Okay, you can know what the spells do in the story, but you can't actually physically cast the spells. I mean, as Muggles can't do that. Or in Star Wars, you can know about the different force powers. You know what they do, but you can't actually do them. So that's kind of what the exam expects you to do. It expects you to know what they are for, but it doesn't expect you to actually execute the commands. All right. Hopefully that made more sense, because I know it couldn't make any less sense. So the macOS command line, again, macOS has an incredibly powerful command line. It's called Terminal. They actually keep an online file for all the commands that you can use. It's, again, very powerful. You can open up Terminal on macOS. If you click on the icon with a multicolored box called Launchpad, you can search for Terminal and click on it. You can customize Terminal just like you can customize your command line in Windows. And I just crashed PowerPoint again. This is like really something doesn't like something in here. Let me try to get back to where I was. I apologize for this, folks. I don't know why. This just, ironically, I've been using PowerPoint a lot and I have yet to have it crash on me anywhere. So I'm not sure why it's doing that, but we will get through. We only have a few more things to talk about and then we're going to call it a night. Okay. So then we have Terminal Linux. Now, again, Linux is, you can get there a whole bunch of different ways. To open up the Linux in Ubuntu, you can search for Terminal. You can use a Windows key, which is a super user, and A. Then from the list of applications, select Terminal. You might also be able to use Control plus Alt plus T, depending on your distro of Linux. Now, here are the commands. And this is what Rio kind of alluded to in chat, which is he thought it was LS. You're right. In Terminal, it is LS. So some of the commands look familiar. They have different names, but they kind of do the same thing. So here we go, right? LS lists the contents in a directory. This is what dir command is in Windows. RM removes files and directories. It's similar to del and rd commands in Windows. And again, these are all commands that are listed specifically on the 1102 exam. So these are commands you need to know what they do. We have pwd. This shows the full path file name of the working directory. We have apt-get. This is used to handle packages, installation, updating, and upgrading in Debian, Ubuntu, and other Debian derivatives. Easy for me to say. Yum is used to handle packages. So it's the same thing as apt-get, except it's for different types of distros. You have cat, which displays the content of text files and configuration files. You have df, which reports file system disk space usage. You have find, which is what you'd use to get find. Now, let me really talk briefly about apt-get. I have a Moodle site, Mr. Ford's class at Moodle Cloud. But before I did that, I had an Amazon Web Services. And it was very much a Linux-based installation. I had to install this kind of a back-end Linux server thing on the Adobe web hosting site. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. And I had to go in and actually enter commands. And so apt-get is what I had to put into Terminal on their web server in order to pull in the Moodle install and install it on the computer. So Linux is a different thing altogether. We have grep, this is a filtering command. We have man, which opens the manual page for any command. We have nano, I'm assuming that's how they pronounce it or how they say it in the world of Linux. This is a text editor that can be used in terminal. We have find, which searches for files and directories. I think I just said that. And man, I got to double check my writing here because I use a few of these more than once. Nano text editor, like I just said, password is used to update password of a user. PS displays information about process lists running processes. Su, SU, allows the user to change the user accounts they are using. And sudo is, yes, I'm well aware. No, I use it twice. And sudo is your, sudo is your super user. It is God of the computer. Originally, it stood for super user do. They've dropped it. Now it's just sudo. So sudo is God of the computer. It is your ultimate admin of everything on that computer. Top analyzes programs that display running Linux processes, RAM, CPU usage for each, and VI is a text editor. We have different file commands for Linux, which is chmod. This modifies the read and write permissions for a file. chown, which changes the ownership of files and directories. cp, which copies files and directories. It's similar to the copy command in Windows. mv is move or rename files, similar to the move command in Windows. And we have left off a whole bunch of networking commands. So what I did, and this is a relatively new PowerPoint, as obvious by a few of the repeats and some of the information, is in the 1102 objectives, they have all of the commands listed, okay? What I wound up doing is I wound up separating them into categories. For example, navigation or file structure things. There's an entire other group just for networking commands. We have, 2 or 3 different units on networking of various types, like local area networking, wireless networking, and internet. We will look at the commands dealing with networking, specifically in the networking units. So I've removed them from this unit and put them in networking because I didn't want to have to, for example, ping, right? Ping is a command. It sends a signal to a server somewhere. It sends information back. I didn't want to get into all the protocols that are required for that to be used. So those are in the networking where it comes up kind of organically in the conversation. So these are not all the commands. These are just all the commands that aren't part of the networking world. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. Does Windows have a text editor like Nano for the terminal? That's a good question. I'm going to say yes. You can use command line. I know back, I'm recalling back in the old days, right? Where you could actually open up a command line. I'm thinking like back in like Windows 3X days when I had like a 386 or a 486 or something like that, where you had to use command line to open up text editors. That's a good question. I don't know. I'm sure that it exists. I couldn't tell you what it is because most of us are going to use text editors through our graphic user interface. We're going to use the Notepad in the GUI, right, versus using it in text base. So I'm sure it exists, but it has been, well, last time I used it, A, I didn't have gray hair, and B, I didn't have a goatee. So sorry about that one. All right, so that wraps up. We've actually kind of wrapped things up a little bit earlier. So these are going about an hour or so because we started the last one at 3:30. It's about 4:19, so about 10 minutes shy of an hour. These seem to be good lengths, I think, for a live stream. It's a little bit different doing a live stream than doing in person, where questions come up in person. Like there's a delay between what I'm saying right now and what's going on YouTube. But I think these are good live streams. I think these are good kind of reviews for you, get you ready for the exam. For those of you in my actual classes, I've got practice quizzes up online for you. These PowerPoints we made available if they're not already available for you. I also have a bunch of links to YouTube videos that I like that are out there to help you review. If you're finding me and you're not in my class, I hope these help you as well. I would suggest that if you are studying for 1102, that you really focus in on it. They are releasing the next exam, and they usually give you some leeway, obviously some leeway to finish off your current certification. I will tell you right now, in the industry, and I said this in another live stream, the authors of a lot of the books are either retired or dead, and so they're not writing them anymore. This is my last year as a classroom teacher. My want is next year, when I'm no longer in the classroom, to be an author. I've already got one book published, and so I'm working on some other books that I would love to see out there and kind of take that space. So I'm done babbling for now. Tomorrow, and for the rest of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we will start the live streams later on in the evening. This was, again, earlier because of another commitment. So I think with that, I am going to say goodbye. Thank you for joining us, and have fun studying out there until our next live stream. Good luck studying. Tomorrow, we'll be taking a look at the ITF certification. Wednesday, we're coming back for more A+. And Thursday, we finish off the live stream week with some more ITF stuff. So tomorrow, ITF, Wednesday, A+, Thursday, ITF. And that's it for me. Thank you once again for joining me. Have fun studying out there, and goodbye for now.